It's been an honor and a privilege to be with all you guys through this season. Who here has heard the phrase, be a man? You know, we all have, right? The idea is that if you're not a man, you're a girl or a woman. And the inference being that somehow that's less than. You have to act a certain way to be a man. And that's something that led me to prison. If you keep crying, I'm gonna give you something to cry for. That was the rule in my house. And that's something that allowed me to shut down when things came up. I ended up getting addicted to heroin in prison because of that, basically. I mean, I couldn't face reality.
I grew up in a household where my dad was in charge. He worked every day, he supported the family. He didn't say much, but he was the man of the house. And, you know, coming up, what are we supposed to be? The man of the house. So when I'm hearing, you know, this patriarchy and I'm hearing the negative aspects and all that, I had them in my household. Boys don't cry. Those things, it doesn't take any of us a genius added to me sitting right here with 32 years of life in this place.
We get to choose what type of man we become in life. And it's always been our choice, and it always will be. So the question lies, what kind of man will you be?
Richie really helped me step out of my comfort zone too. And I appreciate you for starting this group, for giving me the opportunity to facilitate. Man, you really opened my eyes to some powerful things in my life. I never would have challenged that patriarchal way of thinking, you know, because of my beliefs and my faith and my upbringing. And even when all of us went against you when it came to that patriarchal conversation, you remained firm in that. And I admire your courage. I admire everything about you, man. You're somebody that I look up to, and it's not just because you're 6'4" and I'm 5'8". You know, hey, but I love you, brother. Nothing but love from the bottom of my heart to the top. You know, you're a real one to me.
The realest thing that I could say is that I'm fake is what? And if you wait enough, you might just hear me say some other stuff that's just a little true. It isn't you. I was never papered up. In my crew, I was a little dude. I banged just to look tough.
Men who are whole can speak their fear without shame.
This is a story of how I lost myself and really never found me. I lost 4 out of 5 of my fights in the county.
When males are required to wear the mask of a false self, they cannot experience joy and they can never truly love.
He was jealous of the kids whose mamas let him go to parties, so he got high and made beats to feel part of the culture partly.
If a man is not willing to break patriarchal rules that say he should never change, he will turn away from loved ones and choose his manhood over his personhood, isolation over connectedness. A Will to Change, page 188. Those are my favorite ones.
Straight nerd, insecure, and hated rules. Man, I hope the homies still let me bump my music and think I'm cool. Thank you.
All right, fellas. It's all right. Another season. For those of you guys that don't know what Success Stories is about, look, it would be a lie to say that that the majority, if not all of us, have sold out at one point or another and basically ignored what's important. And the proof to that is the fact that we're all wearing blue. And then just appreciating, actually giving you some space to open up on all the amazing shit that's going on in your mind and all the ideas and all the thoughts and all the visions that you have that you may seem embarrassed to actually express that. And actually find some space to be able to be appreciated for that, to be able to be respected for that, and to be acknowledged for who you truly are and not who we always act to be. And the person that's gonna run our first exercise is Rich Edmond Vargas.
What's up? Everybody has a strip of blue paper, right? Or raise your hand if you don't. Okay, cool. On the left column of 5, write the 5 most important people in your life. And I encourage you to not overthink it, but be honest. Be honest. The 5 most important people to you in your life. It got to be 5. So, all right. Now on the second list of 5, that's about halfway down the paper, write top 5 things that you have to accomplish before you die. Another way of describing that is the top 5 most important goals to you. 5 things that you have to accomplish before you die. But this is just the beginning. What you're going to do is you're going to cross out 2 things on that list. Now, not in the gangbanger way, like I'm crossing them out and I'm saying, therefore, them. I don't mean it like that. What we're about to do is find out what's most important to you in your life.
I got here in August of 2013 after doing like a year in LA County Jail and a year at high security. I got here, I went to this group, and the first time I went, it was this group conversation talking about like what it is to be a man and what a man's supposed to be. And they pretty much were just like condemning the street life and the gangbang stuff and all that, but upholding these patriarchal ideas of manhood, like a man is supposed to be a provider and a protector and run the house, and they were condemning illegal activity, but not necessarily patriarchal activity.
Somebody want to share their top 5?
You know, God is first and foremost. My child, Lania, she's 13. My mother, spiritual influence in my life. Public ministry and family.
Before I pass away, you know, I want to be a great father and husband.
Let's get off parole, find a career, help people. I cross off own a house and start a family.
All right, cool, thank you.
What led me to commit the crimes? How I ended up here ultimately, it started with my insecurity. I was like a weird artsy kid, and that was cool with me in elementary school. But when I got to middle school, my peers had bought into this idea of this is what it is to be a black man, and it was the hyper violent, hyper masculine, and immediately like I picked up on the fact that that's how I was supposed to be, and that my self, like my artsy self, that wasn't good enough. So I started hanging out with gang members. I started getting high, and I pretty much got high. I got high every day I could from when I was 12 until I came to prison at 19.
This is my bed, and like my desk and office and everything. So like people in prison roll their mats up so that way you can use this space to like make food or to write. And we will like use one of our sheets and hang it right here so that you can kind of use the bathroom in peace. This is like my spiritual area. So like my hero right here, Malala Yousafzai and Beyonce are like 2 of the people I look up to the most. And like this card that my wife sent me that says we're gonna win, which is like our thing. It's like our phrase, it's what we say.
When we get to prison, you either dive deeper into the madness or you revert back to whatever you knew to be right before you got into the madness. My experience of going to prison, 2 armed robberies, showing up to court, and they're like, you're fighting 150 years to life, just feeling like, I remember my homie literally passed out, and I like caught him, and just feeling like, whoa, like they're trying to take my life away, like this is real. The hood life was like, okay, that ain't it. I don't want to do that anymore. Like this is not, it's not worth it. Like, and reverting back to, you know, the people who always had my back and supported me. My wife, Taina, my mentor, Patrice, my best friend, Haywan, and just like analyzing everything around me and just asking them, like, send me books. And they sent me bell hooks. I started reading up on it, doing a lot of reading. We did a 6-month lockdown at the high security prison I was at before I came here. And I started seeing how we as men were really destroying ourselves on some patriarchal stuff. And you know, so it's like, imagine you're reading this stuff and you lower the book and you're seeing it, and you're seeing like real violence, like people getting stabbed, people getting beat up, people getting shot, like from the gun towers as things are going down. And you're just like, we don't gotta live like this, y'all, but being too scared to say it.
Top 5, I put my mom, my dad, get out of jail, have kids, and graduate.
Graduate from high school or college?
High school.
High school?
And college, whatever. Just in general.
Yes, sir.
Put my mom, my girl, you know, her daughter, get out of prison and get a job. Because, I mean, when I was little, I used to look forward, you know what I mean? I was like, yeah, I'm gonna be a gangster, you know, like, you know, running around, you know what I mean? And plus, I never had a job.
Can anybody think of a time when the people you have on this top 5 or the things you have on this top 5 right now, you've always said was important, but can you think of an instance where you literally didn't, you know, live that out?
I met the woman that would become my wife, and then my ex-wife, and we had a son, and I thought I was doing really good. I thought I was doing what I needed to do. I thought that having a job was enough, and but still that addiction that I got in an early stage of my life carried with me everywhere I went, and wherever I go, there I was.
And the only reason I know is I did it. Came in here with the board answers. Oh, what's important? My mom. Shit, my mom wasn't out there important when I was firing that pistol. My ego was just important. You stepped on my ego, I'm feeling some type of way, pow! I wasn't thinking about moms. It's BS, you feel me? When you come to prison and you start trying to figure out, well, how did I get here? Because I always saw myself as different. Like when I grew up with both my parents, and then you see like a lot of these guys, they didn't grow up with both parents in the household. They didn't graduate from high school. Like, so I came in with that era of, I'm not you guys. So when I was a kid, one of the first instances that I remember, and this is where the scar comes from, it was me and another kid, we were playing with Hot Wheels. And when me and my family came in, he was like, look, mommy, niggers. To me, I just brushed it off. Like I didn't know at the time. I had never been faced with anything like that before. So I didn't brush it off. And then when we were playing with Hot Wheels, later on, he threw it and it cut me. And I defended myself. And in that moment, I started to confuse physical dominance with respect, because it didn't happen anymore. Like, I beat him up, now I'm not getting Hot Wheels thrown at me. So that pattern of when I'm met with a force that makes me either feel uncomfortable or less than, that was how I learned to solve it. And then, you know, I started to confuse, you know, people looking up to you, and then that just caused a whole nother level of insecurities and maladaptive behavior. Like, it was ridiculous.
I mean, I say these things, you know, but I still participate, you know, I'm still an active gang member or whatever, you know what I mean? And, you know what I mean? Like, this is my first time ever to a group right here, you know what I mean? Yeah, it's my first time, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? And yeah, I still got the little mentality, you mean, I'm young, I'm 22, you know what I mean? I still got the mentality of it, you know?
Let's keep it real. We all go to those groups because we want the chrono. We want to get out of prison. Like, yeah. That was my mindset. I'm going to do these groups because this is what I have to do if I want a chance to go home. So whether I like them or not, I'm going to go. Whether I participate or not, I'm going to go. Yeah. I'm going to get that piece of paper, whether it means something or whether it doesn't. I'm going to do what I have to do to try to go home. And it's not easy to talk for any of us. It's not easy for me to open up and talk about anything. But I'm here, I'm trying.
I've been through a bunch of different groups. I don't have to. I'm not doing life. But I struggle with who I am. And I'm sick of being this way. You know what I mean? I'm tired of this. And I started drinking when I was 10. I started using other drugs when I was like 14. When I was in junior high, I was wearing, I'm from a small like country town, and I was wearing these Vans, the slip-on ones, and they had like all these weird faces on it, and I had a sweater and it had like an anarchy patch on it, and it was like at lunchtime or break or something like that, and we're standing out front of the cafeteria by the vending machines, and this big dude, he just ranked me out in front of everybody that what I was wearing, I was a fag or whatever, something like that, something like that. I don't even remember what he said, but my takeaway was that I shouldn't be dressing like this, that I can't. And I went home and I stopped wearing those shoes, and I tore the patch off my sweater, and because I did not want to get beat up by this dude. He was like twice my size at the time. It's like it wasn't okay to just tell somebody that they're hurting your feelings, or even talk about that you have feelings, let alone telling somebody that they're offending you. So when somebody does something to offend you, it was taught to me that I should just hit them, and I did that quite a few times. In fact, the day that I got arrested, I don't think anybody's really a tough guy, you know? I think people are just people. They're just normal people, and we're just told that we have to be tough guys. By the time that I figured out that I didn't need to be that way, it was too late. You know, I had already committed a heinous act, you know, and several more before that I never got caught for. You know, this was just the latest in a long line of violence that I did get caught for.
I thought you'd make it, I thought you'd make it. And then the thing is like, I don't remember it. I'd have to look at it again. Awkward silence.
That's the last time you thought about it?
That I thought about Zach?
Yeah.
No. He just hit me the other day, bro. I was just like, I think we was working out. I was doing something random, and I just thinking like, bro, Zach is really dead. Like, he's really gone. Like, I'm gonna go home and he's not gonna be there. It's just weird to me to think about it like that. Like he doesn't exist no more. Like, and every time I think about him, that song comes to my mind. Cause like I found out he died. Haywan told me that night. Haywan and Charles. And the next day I started writing the song. I didn't know what else to do. I just felt like he overdosed in April of this year. Prescription pills. I just wish that I could tell you, you ain't gotta live that way.
Yeah, it's belligerent in the hotel room.
And I know it's partly my fault that you ever did. I'm mad at you, I'm sad at you, and towards our friends, I feel away. Feel away. Most of all, I'm just mad at the shit we did as kids. Most of all, I'm just something hot about
do
the
that
shit we
less.
did as kids.
Do that less like a verse and more like
I'm just
belligerent in the hotel room. Like
I know, but when I do it, I feel like I'm gonna start crying. I'm like trying to
cry.
control it. Like, as soon as I started doing it, I felt like I was really yelling at him.
Yeah, they could do it.
That's why I make cheesy pop music, because I don't like feeling shit. The one I just wrote. Renegade rich, I'm a big dick feminist, there's only one eye, that's a slick Rick reference. Get the bed quick, on my Bisquick regimen that's weather shit round like a sickness. Cystic fibrosis, osteoporosis, chondroblastomas, the shit is in my bones. I do this for my culture, to let them know what it looked like when a nigga in his moment who used to be homeless and robbed on some broke shit and went on the bin where he got on his grown shit. I'm showing my focus. I'm showing my focus, I'm living it so no one is hopeless. I wrote this, so post it on social and blow up past local, go loco and loke up for yo shit.
Whole nother level. I grew up in a Christian household. My dad is an elder in the church. Pops was pretty strict. I didn't like listen to any what he called worldly music. My dad would like have BET on our TV, but it was so he can like write sermons about what's happening in the world. So I remember being a kid sneaking into the den behind his chair just so I could watch a Snoop Dogg video. And he'd catch us and shoo us out of there. But yeah, it was like Pops was not having it. We couldn't watch The Simpsons. Like, he was just very, like, mindful of what we watched and what we did and who we hung with. At 15, I murdered somebody. I crossed his path. We exchanged, you know, words and aggression. And I left, got a gun, came back and shot him. I did it because I was small. And I don't mean that physically, but I mean emotionally. Like, my self-esteem, I felt small and I wanted to feel big. And that was a chance for me to feel big. And the truth is, I didn't feel big after that. Yeah, there is no reason. It was senseless. Show of hands, who here has a brother that they love? Brother? Okay, who here has a road dog, best friend, like your boy, ride or die, right? So what we've been taught is that with your ride or die, it's that, you ride or die. And if somebody do something to that rollie or your brother, your ride or die, you're supposed to retaliate. That's what we've been taught. Don't nobody touch ours, right? So I want to tell you guys a story about my brother. My brother was murdered, duct taped and murdered, thrown in the street, left like trash. For 10 years, I was incarcerated, living with that knowledge, like, my brother gone. For 10 years, I would think about if I caught this dude, because they arrested him, found him guilty, he was doing time, and I said, if I catch him, I'ma do him, period. I go to visit him one day, about 5 days after my birthday, I turned 25. When I get in the visiting room, my mom and my sister have painted smiles on their face. I can tell something's off. Sit down with my mom and my sister, and my mom points to a guy in the visiting room and says, "Who is that?" This is a brother I've been talking to for 2 years, lived on the same tier as me. I knew him as the brother, you know, Brother Jay. She looks back to my sister, looks back to me, and says, "That's him." Without any further explanation needed, I knew who she was talking about. This was the guy who duct taped and murdered my brother and left him in the street like trash. My life is over, I'm not going home, I gotta kill him. I'm fighting God, I'm shaking my fist at God, praying overnight. Like, why would you put this in front of me? You know what I gotta do now. You know what I gotta do. Why would you do this to me? And the more I argued with God, the more it became clear. Ain't nobody making you do nothing. What? Ain't nobody making me do nothing. Nobody making me retaliate and get revenge for my brother. Nobody's forcing me to have this sense of duty that I have. This is something that you're choosing. And you can make another choice. So the next morning, I sat with him at breakfast. I called him by his full name, and he looked at me like, "Bro, we've been here for 2 years. Of course you know my full name." And I said, "Man, you killed my brother." And even in that moment, I just want to get off. I just want to harm him. But the first thing out of his mouth was, "Man, I'm sorry for what I took from you." And I forgave him. Without regard to what people thought of me, without regard to what kind of obligation I made myself feel for the last 10 years. I decided, I'm gonna break this cycle. I ain't gonna kill him. I'm gonna live for what I want. My mom, my sister, my freedom. Thank you. We harm people because we don't see them as people, we objectify them. If a dude is roaring up against me, he's an object, he's an obstacle. He's not a person.
The other guys in the school, the other guys that I want to kick it with, all the guys on the football team, all the guys from the gang were drinking, they're smoking weed, and I wanted to fit in. So guess what I did? I started drinking and smoking weed. Whenever I drank, I realized that I had a confidence that I had never known before. I was able to express myself in a way that I had been fearful to all of my life up until that point. And then I realized, man, I could even talk to the girls now. I'm feeling good. I had this liquid courage in my system. And I was motivated and moved to go out and start talking to girls a lot more often. And I used to objectify women at that point, but I didn't know it by those terms back then because I used to go to school and I was looking for the most beautiful girl in school. And I was thinking in my head, I'm going to get her. And it continued to get worse as I drank more, I partied more, I started to be with more girls, and I started to look at this as a source of proving my manhood. Like when the homies gave me recognition for being able to pull the finest girl in the party, that felt good. That made me feel accepted. That made me start to think that maybe I am good enough. And that validated who I was at that point. But this way of living and this way of thinking escalated all the way to the point to where I objectified another human being at the point of taking his life. I murdered a man because I was emotionally disconnected, because I didn't know how to cope with my feelings, with the feelings of rejection. And I wanted to be accepted more than I valued another human being's life. And that's what I'm ashamed to say today. But I realized that all this was started because of patriarchy and the way that it was showing up in my family, the way that it was showing up in my culture, the way that it was showing up in my community, the way that it shows up in our world. And look, just last year I was opposing this topic. And this year I'm fully invested. I read some books by Bell Hooks about love, about patriarchy. And I started to get real clear on how I was and how I was living and how I was showing up and how I was loving and how that wasn't really love. How I was damaging and destroying all these relationships in my life because of these negative, distorted beliefs and views. Like men are superior to women? That's ridiculous. Like I'm supposed to be the head of the house just because I'm a man? That makes no sense.
I know there's a lot of like touchy subjects that are very uncomfortable, and I even feel uncomfortable just listening to them. But they're uncomfortable for a reason. They're uncomfortable because they stem off of some other shit that goes deeper than just a conversation that we're having in about an hour and a half. And again, it just, stories aside, hypotheticals aside, space this on reality, and as to what's really happening, and what really is the problem. At the age of 3, I was diagnosed with cerebral palsy, and I was this crippled kid who was not normal and who was just always sick or never able to do things. So half of the day I would go to the special ed class, and the other half I would go to the normal class. And the kids in the normal class knew where I was at half the day. So here it was, where I had what they would call cooties, what they would call contagious cooties, and no one wanted to touch the colored pencils in the center of the table, or anything that I would touch was just contaminated with something that I had that everyone else could get. So I lived a life of solitude. I lived a life of asking my teacher if I could go out to recess 5 minutes early just so I could check out a ball and set my own rules on the handball court so that the rule of no cripples allowed wouldn't be placed. And I found myself in this quest of trying to be normal. And I entered this rat race of just constantly trying to prove myself that I was normal.
How many times has that put you in a position where you don't have what you want? Where you're in a position where you're not satisfied with your life and you look at yourself and you're not happy with this?
Many times we tell ourselves that that's our survival. Like, in order for me to survive, I have to be a man. I have to carry myself a certain way. And if I'm not that, then I'm gonna fake it till I make it. I'm gonna scrunch my face, I'm gonna have this tone, and I'm gonna look as aggressive as possible. And for me, being 5'1" and not really having the best abilities of fighting, it was carrying weapons. It was having something that would equalize the part that I felt lesser than.
Everybody in the prison is locked up from 9 o'clock at night until 6 in the morning.
every moving incarcerated person is in the cell at that time unless there's some medical emergency or something. So that's usually the time that we see each other because Jazz is super busy.
I gotta go deliver mail, you know.
Do you wanna go ahead.
Sing a song?
Nah, no. Now we actually are like coming up on success stories time. I'm really excited about this conversation today. We have a really good team of facilitators who are not afraid to walk up to circles full of active gang members and be like, hey, y'all need to go to success stories. Well, what's that about? Well, this is what it's about. Patriarchy, as the guys will learn today, is the biggest hindrance to our success. We all had these great dreams and stuff when we were little kids, but at some point it was more important for us to be tough. It was more important for us to be, to not back down or whatever, to buy into toxic masculinity. And everybody, and I'm willing to assert that everybody in that room, including myself, put what the patriarchal expectations that the world had on us before our own goals. It's hard for me to tell where my nervousness ends and my excitedness starts, but I'm like happy about it. This is gonna be my last one here, probably. Yeah, I gotta find Roy first. No, they're back already. I just didn't know if he was still in the shower. You got the books?
Yeah, I do.
Awesome. Thank you.
I wrote down some of the quotes that you liked. I wanted to get the clear definition of what Bell Hooks said patriarchy is. It's big because it was hard for so many people to accept it, even myself at the beginning, like we talked about. And I was having that discussion with Martin on the yard. You know, we were talking about working on him. So,
how did that go?
Not too well. He's real resistant. He's super resistant.
I was all hopeful when you said it, man. Okay.
He's in the conversation seeking to defeat why patriarchy is not just bad. He wants to say that it's good in some senses.
Like
and,
what?
Because his father was a patriarch, and he believes that if he says that patriarchy is bad, he feels like that's a condemnation of his father, and he doesn't want to go there. So it's kind of hard for people to come to grips that some things that our parents did weren't right. You know, because maybe in their mind they're thinking that that's a negative judgment, and they're saying that their parents were bad parents. That's not the case. You know, you hate the evil behind what the people do. Yeah. And that's what I came to. That's why I was able to accept it the way that I have been.
No, I can relate. I felt the same way. Like just talking about my dad, and I felt like I was betraying him.
Yeah.
My dad was certainly living more responsibly. Like, he wasn't committing violence in the streets and stuff. Like, he wasn't in the streets at all, never smoked, never drank, no tattoos, none of that stuff. My family who is like that, he always kept us far away from them. But the kind of violence that's like acceptable in terms of how men were supposed to be, that was still being affirmed in my house. Like, my dad told me on my first day of first grade, don't let anybody hit you. If you think they're gonna, he said, if someone hits you, hit them back, and if you think they're gonna hit you, hit them first. And he would say, my son is in the punching bag, and you know, if we get into it and we started crying, you know, he would call me Regina rather than Richard, or, you know, there's kind of this value in America that yes, men are supposed to be violent, but only when it's appropriate, only if they work in law enforcement, or if they work in the military, or if, you know, the justifiable violence or the righteous violence or whatever. Peck argues that compartmentalization is a way to avoid feeling pain. Integrity is painful, but without it, there can be no wholeness. To be whole, men must practice integrity.
No, I think that's really big. If I would have known all this back then, I would have been a different person. I would have never committed the murder that I committed. There was a lot of things that I would have never done.
Being this patriarchal dude, you know, albeit with not that language, to have somebody calling that behavior out and being like, man, this is what got us here, and this is what's killing us, and this is what's destroying our communities. Dudes, we're not feeling it. The fear is, if I show you who I really am, that's not gonna be good enough, and I'm gonna be ostracized. And it sounds silly, like it sounds like a small fear, but it's everything. What's up, y'all? In toxic masculinity, you become a real man by doing 3 things. Athletic skills, by dominating in that sense, by objectifying women, and by having money.
So, but I'm gonna take it a little further because ultimately, even the athletic part is really what Manny Thomas was talking about. It really comes down to violence. So the dude, the coldest football player in high school, what it always came down to was, okay, yeah, you can ball, but I can beat your ass. And that's what was ultimately was gonna decide who was the man and who wasn't, is if I can beat your ass, then I'm coming up on top. We probably never heard anybody say anything like, well, he objectifies women, therefore I feel like he's a real man. Nobody says that. But instead of saying objectifying women, what are some of the things that we hear in the community where we're talking about, oh, he's a real one because he objectifies women? He's a pimp. He's a player. He got hoes. He got bitches, right? These are some of the ways that we prop a man up. Same thing with violence. We might not say, oh, he's willing to be violent, therefore I respect his manhood. Nobody says that. But what people might say is, oh, he's with the bullshit. He's with it. What else?
He got hands.
He's with the business. He got hands. He's down.
Watch out, he ain't no punk.
He's not a punk, or he's
Watch
a good
out,
dude.
He's not a punk.
They call him knockout.
Ben gave us the 50s one.
Ben went straight to the 50s. Watch out, he's not a punk, guys.
And the money one, I mean, the money one is pretty much self-explanatory. So in our cultures, we could see how we buy into toxic masculinity. We might not use the same language they would use in a video with a bunch of psychologists, but we're familiar with this, with what toxic masculinity is. Raise your hand and say that you were raised being taught that you should embrace that. So again, if you're really willing to be honest, who actually did embrace it? So we're gonna talk about why.
But what was the other option?
Hold on. I ain't wrote on the board yet. And that was too deep for me, I didn't have an answer yet. So we're not just acting like this for no reason. We didn't make this stuff up on our own. Why do we buy into this? What are some of the payoffs we get for buying into toxic masculinity? Okay, you get to be the boss.
Glory.
Glory.
Reputation.
Somebody said acceptance. Self-esteem. I'm gonna say pride too, because that's a good one. Now, what are the costs, the long-term costs of buying into this? Life sentence.
Life sentence.
Death. I'm gonna get yours too, Chris. That was bomb though. Emotionally dead.
Unsatisfied, brother.
Ooh, I was about to say.
Bad relationships.
Loneliness.
Okay. So just based on seeing it up here, I mean, I feel like it's an obvious question, but do the payoffs seem like they're worth the cost? Absolutely not. And yet we do it all the time. So when a whole culture, right, we all do this individually. As individual men, we buy into this stuff. But when the whole culture around us buys into this, including women and all that, kids, when everybody in the society is buying into this, or most people are buying into this, we describe that culture as a patriarchal culture. So so people often say, what's the difference between toxic masculinity and patriarchy? Toxic masculinity is what I'm doing just with my masculinity on the day-to-day. But when everybody on my block, everybody in my city, everybody in my state, everybody in my country is feeling that to some level, we have what's called a patriarchal society, which is not to be mixed up with the more traditional definition of the word patriarchy, which means like male leadership. Certainly we're not saying that it's bad to be a male and be a leader. We're just saying that you don't deserve to be a leader just because you're male. What's some other stuff that grows out of that when everybody's believing in that?
Oppression.
What do you mean?
Well, it oppressed me in a way to where I was not even able to express my emotions. It specifically oppresses women. Like when I think about it, how many female presidents have there been in the United States of America? And I think the answer is none. And I ask why. Maybe it has something to do with patriarchy.
I think there's gay bashing. You know what I mean? Not only just with dudes, but in church, wherever you are. You know what I mean?
Homophobia. But we'll often use gay as a code word to say, you're not following the rules. You're not doing this, so you must be gay. Why are you simping to her, bro? That's hella gay. Like, why are you being nice to her like that? Or, oh, he ain't trying to fight? That nigga's a faggot. even though a lot of that stuff has nothing to do with homosexuality or whatever. So gangbanging is one. Like domestic violence is one. You gotta put her in check, put her in her place, whatever.
You know, she was dressed like she wanted it. Like you taking the blame off the act you committed and putting it on the person that's the victim of it.
Bomb. So I want to talk about that a little bit. That specific kind of victim blaming is called rape culture. People who rape are not just these random monsters that climb up out of the swamp. These people exist in our culture, and we make it okay. We make them think it's okay to do that when we do shit like, oh, well, what would, if a girl gets raped, we'll say things like, well, what was she wearing? Why was she even over there? Why was she drinking? And putting it all on her. Bomb. That's so true. Who grew up in a house where you were afraid of your parents? Or times when you felt like maybe you questioned if they loved you or not. So that's the kind of atmosphere of fear. We're all pretty clear on the problem. What's the solution? Roy got a quote for us that we're gonna use.
This is a book called The Will to Change by Bell Hooks. She's one of the leading feminists that writes about patriarchy. And this is a quote right here by her. It says, by learning the art of compartmentalization, dissimulation, and disassociation, men are able to see themselves as acting with integrity in cases where they are not. Their learned state of psychological denial is severe, since most men have been socialized to believe that compartmentalization is a positive practice. It feels right, it feels comfortable. To practice integrity, then, it is difficult, it hurts. Peck makes the crucial point. Integrity is painful, but without it, there can be no wholeness. To be whole, men must practice integrity.
So what she's saying is that the solution to patriarchy is to have integrity, which if like the quote said, if you think of the word integrated, being one person, being all the way whole. So not cutting off your emotions and putting them over here. I only express my emotions with these people. Or not saying, this is what's important to me up until over here, but I'm in prison, so I gotta act a certain way. Or I'm in a street, so I gotta act a certain way. Or I'm from this neighborhood, or I had this kind of background, so I gotta act a certain way. But being one person, being that person who, whoever you put on your top 5, those goals, those people you love, living for them all the time. Even when the whole culture is saying, be like this, are you willing to put your top 5 first in those moments? And ultimately, that's a choice that you're gonna have to make. But that's what we're offering, is that is a choice that you have. You can put your top 5 first and decide to be one person. Not one person with your family and one person with the homies, but one person. And that's the solution to this. If we all do that, then we build a new culture with a new tree. Thank you.
Can I get an utterance? Listen, this whole class was based out of a book that a woman wrote.
Oh, first off.
So
you.
Heck yeah, I'm a feminist. I think it's important that men talk about feminism explicitly, talk about patriarchy explicitly, and identify as feminists. And we haven't gone so far in success stories to be like, you should identify as a feminist. We try to show, not tell. But we're very clear, like, this is feminist literature that we're reading. This is a feminist perspective. And dudes get crazy. Like, I've had, like, people, men, we're sensitive. Like, we don't like being challenged and being called out. And I've had dudes who, like, got, like, in my face like they were gonna fight me. I've had facilitators get in my face like they were gonna fight me.
Is that not true?
So when Richie first brought this up to me, my perspective on feminism was that women are mad and they want the position of the man, and you're gonna give me some information from a person who's living in their victimhood. I really don't care. Like, that's the perspective from the jump. Like, beyond what her gender is what she's saying true? Is Bell Hooks, like, keeping it 100? And I think she is.
We didn't hear about patriarchy and being called a bitch and all that and just accept it out the gate. We were the dudes like, it's not gonna happen. Yeah. So in that moment, what I do is when I see it, I recognize it, and I take that moment to say, all right, look, man, I was that dude. And then when I read the book, it just hit all my buttons. Like, oh yeah, I did believe that. I did believe that how many women I had, you know, or had sex with, you know, added value to me as a man. Oh, it didn't matter how much money I have, like, you know, how good I could fight or defend myself, how good I was on the football field. When I started to see that, that's what I saw identify me as a man, and then that's what I was like, okay, wake up, what's going on? Prison basically is a microcosm of what we have in society, right? I picked up certain belief systems, and I picked up certain things from the TV that I watch, from the heroes that I was given. I mean, if we look back and we think about, let's just look at cartoons. How was Bugs Bunny solving his problems? How was, you know what I mean, when Wile E. Coyote was chasing the Roadrunner, he was getting anvils and all types of stuff dropped on him. Now, we can say, oh, that's fun and games. It's cartoons. But your child is learning something. I'm learning that, okay, I can stop this by this. And those are all violent acts. Now, you may not choose to see it that way, I mean, but that's what it is. You know what I mean? So you have to be vigilant in the things that are going on in your community in every aspect. Like, this isn't being done in a vacuum. And I think we lose sight of that.
Let's say I were to adopt fully this new integrity kind of mentality where, okay, I'm gonna do everything against toxic masculinity, but then I'm met with women that are calling me a bitch for having integrity, and therefore I'm feeling the pressure from the women in my life. How do I face that with integrity?
It's not easy for me to say or whatever, but you know, I've had problems, you know, with my ex-wife, with feelings of insecurity because, you know, I wasn't bringing home enough. I wasn't doing enough.
Some of the women that he's mentioning saying, oh, you're a bitch, maybe some of them will be like, oh, you're compassionate, you're sensitive.
My wife has called me a punk plenty of times. It doesn't even bother me today because I know what that is. Like, that's an easy button for people to press because they know usually that's the way to get you to react. 9 times out of 10, anybody calls you a punk, bitch, pussy, faggot, whatever, whether they be men or women, they looking because they know what our reaction is supposed to be according to the rules.
Who here doesn't buy into what we just said? Let's ask that question. Because everybody's giving good, you know, answers. Thank you, brother, for being honest. Tell me why.
Well, you guys are trying to teach us how to throw all this stuff out the window, but when I get out there, I'm gonna have kids, and you guys are telling me to teach them to cry, and it's okay to do this, and it's okay to do that, but yet when they go to school, kids ain't like that. I'm from Granada Hills, California, and there's a lot of white people right there, and the white people is mean sometimes, and they could be on you know what I'm saying, Benjamin? But at the end of the day, you know, I'm on a serious note, you know, kids are killing themselves over being bullied at school.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? So I can understand me putting this to my life because that's what I have to do in order to stay out. But teaching this to my kid, I want to know on a real note how you guys expect me to do that.
I'm saying tell your son, tell yourself, your brother, your cousin, your mama, your auntie, all of them, to dismiss that. Because that is contributing to this. That is contributing to your son getting bullied at school. So when he goes to school and he comes back and he's like, Pop, they calling me gay because I want to play with the girls. Pop, they calling me gay because I'm crying. I'm saying it is our job to instill in him integrity. You are who you are. When I forgave the dude who killed my brother, all the stuff was popping up for me. Pop, they saying I'm gonna be a mark. Pop, they might take my stuff. Dang, I ain't really no G because I ain't did this for my brother. I ain't really no gangster like that, man. That might mean it was uncertain. But I cared about that. I cared about my mama, who before I left the visit said, don't kill him, I want you home. Who gonna do something if somebody call him a bitch? Let's ask that. Who gonna get mad and fire dude shit up for getting called a bitch? Let's address it. Like, stop bullshitting, raise your hand, right? Now, let's ask the question, why? Why?
Pride. You know, this is what I was taught when I was younger. Certain words you don't accept, certain words mean this. When this person calls you this is how you react to it.
Okay.
So, if I was to come out this room knowing that I'm just doing everything possible to change my train of thoughts, the way I think, and I could walk in this room with somebody in the hallway right now, can see me and be like, what's up with your bitch ass? My first reaction is to get off.
And in the military, we do that, but they tell us to do that, to have integrity. Honor, courage, commitment, right? I was in the Marine Corps. This is society right now. Turn on the TV. You know, our president is pretty much, he's in a cockfight with North Korea. You know, white supremacists
are doing what they're doing in Charlotte. And our country is divided over this model. We're pursuing the Joneses, you know? We're objectifying women. I mean, you see it all over the magazines. And violence, you know? Who in here doesn't like guns? Right? Yeah, we don't like guns in here, right? But yeah, if a gun and ammo magazine drops, everybody wants to look at it. You know, let's keep it real. And that's what it takes. You know, being a man has to be redefined. That's what it takes.
I try to teach my boys, I thought right, but now I know why my boy's in a wheelchair. I know why he got shot. I know why my other boy, I'm in the county. Hey, Pops, man, you know how embarrassing that was? My son in there, what are you doing right here? I taught him all this stuff. And I used to do that to my little boy. When he came home, they dumped him in the toilet and all, man, I was pissed. I sent my other boy over there. I realized how wrong that was. I wish I could stop him now. You guys are on time still to stop all this stuff, man. My son is never gonna walk. This man knows my son. I'm not lying, I'm not making this up. It's real stuff. So I suggest you guys take this in. I wish I could express it better. I'm not that good on words, but I'm feeling it right now. I'm hearing all you guys talk, I'm feeling it. And just good luck, man.
It's a big dude, imagine him turned up.
Thank you. You got a question?
No, it's not a question, it's really a statement, basically. I feel everything you guys are saying, I appreciate all you guys' stuff, but you know, I'm gonna put some stuff out there on some personal note. I was raised by my mom, my pops was never there. The reason why I'm asking you guys these questions is because I never had my dad there. So, me being around my mom all the time, that's all I knew. I didn't know how to be a man. I learned how to be a man through trial and error. My mom showed me how to be a man, and the street showed me how to be a man from what I thought was a man. So a lot of stuff you guys are saying, I feel it, but I lived it. I was bullied growing up. I didn't have money, so people were mean to me. So that made me violent. Because you bullying me, you guys gonna bully me, you guys gonna bully me, you guys gonna bully me, there's only so much I was gonna take. I wasn't gonna kill myself, obviously, but I took violence. Now you're gonna learn not to mess with me. And then once I did that, then I got addicted to the violence because I seen what it created. This big ass dude was picking on me and now he's scared of me. What else can I do with this now? So I just adventured out on it. So like I said, I feel what you guys are saying, and you guys are saying talk to him. That's the same thing my mom used to do to me. Like, baby, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. Mama loves you. That shit didn't mean nothing when I went to school. Mama loves me. Mama loves me. Mama loves me. Mama loves. That didn't mean shit to me. That's keeping it G.
So I want to respond before we run out of time. Notice that a lot of the questions are in the form of these what ifs. And a lot of, it was spoke about earlier, like a lot of what perpetuates this shit is fear. Fear of these hypothetical situations and what's gonna happen if. So what I'm saying is we use these myths and these fears to propel actually being the bullies. Every bully I've ever met says, I hate bullies. And that's what he uses to justify being a bully.
Roy, can you touch on that one? You said you had a little something more to offer?
Yeah, I do. To be honest with you, I lived in a household where there was different forms of abuse. So as a young child feeling abused, you feel humiliated. You're terrified, especially if it's somebody within your own household or family. That's something that you believe that should never happen, and it's super confusing. So when you're really scared and confused, kids can respond in different ways. There are defensive mechanisms that come up when those situations occur. For the ones that I personally experienced is a lot of anger, a lot of rage. And there were times where it could feel like I'm less of a man because of that. And because I feel like less of a man, I feel the need to prove my manhood. And to prove my manhood, I'm displaying all those toxic masculine traits.
That was something for me as a kid. You know, I was beaten, I was molested, I was tortured, all that stuff, and I never had anywhere to go with that. And being emotionally unintelligent, I lashed out a lot to a lot of different people throughout my whole life, to where, you know, at 22, I ended up getting a bar fight and stabbing 5 people. And I think that to stem that way back when kids are little, just listen to them, you know, and be there for them. You know, you don't always have to have the perfect, most wise thing to say. You know, sometimes they just need to be heard. Breaking the cycle has been my goal since I was a little kid, basically. I knew that there was something wrong. I knew it because my dad and his dad, you know, had so super broken relationships, and that carried on to my relationship with my father. You know, I never saw him. I knew that he was a violent alcoholic, and I swore I was going to be that way. And it was some sort of self-fulfilling prophecy that I lived right into. And now that I have a son, it's almost like I imagine that my father felt this way, like, oh, he's a really smart kid, you know, he'll be all right. And I think that it's easy to feel that way. You know, it's easy just to let somebody else deal with it. And I know that that's condemning my son to the same fate that I ended up living. But and what I try to do is, in between conversations about Pokemon, is just instill in him some sort of emotional intelligence. You know, that it's okay to feel however he's feeling, and that he has an outlet. He can talk to me about it. And see, me and my wife are divorced, and our relationship is strained, to say the least. But I want him to be able to talk to somebody, you know. And I don't get to see him as much as I'd like. But I think that's the secret, is just understanding what we're feeling and being able to express it. Because I was never able to do that as a kid. I would cry myself to sleep at night. I would act out in school. I didn't just wake up one day and want to be violent. I didn't just wake up one day and say, you know what, I think I'm just gonna become a raging alcoholic. You know, stuff happened.
Yeah, so this is how I explained it. I guess that's what folks are asking for, is that within rape culture, right? Maybe not everybody actually commits rape, but we all participate in the culture that leads to rape happening. Rapists are not these random people that have nothing to do with any of us. So when we're objectifying a woman, or we're looking at a woman in a sexual way, making sexual comments, breaking our neck, whatever, and not giving a f about what she thinks or feels, seeing her as a thing rather than a person, we're contributing to rape culture. So we might not actually be raping, but we're making the first step, which is I can look at you in a sexual way whether you like it or not, which is like that kind of patriarchal entitlement. And when we create that culture, that's ultimately how rape happens. You know, everybody in GP, we like to look at ourselves like we better than other dudes because we don't have rape cases or whatever. So people always bring that up. I'm not no rapist, why are we talking about this? But it's important that we talk about rape culture in those. And then Manny had brought up, well, how do you connect that back to somebody's success? And it comes back to compartmentalization. Like, I'm willing to look at this woman in a sexually objectifying way, or to talk bad about her, or to need the homie off the shit out of her or whatever, but if someone were to do that to my daughter, I would be upset. That's like some compartmentalization stuff. It's okay to do it over here, it's not okay to do over here, and I can't have integrity if I'm doing that. So that's another way to relate it back to the individual participant. The question is this: how is it a bad thing to say that a man is supposed to be a provider and a protector?
When you're saying that you're delegating to a man, like he's the only one that should be doing it, like he's the only one that can fit that position or that occupation. You're basically saying that women can't do it, that they're mentally unable to do it or physically unable to do it.
One, you're saying that a person gets their value through their gender. Like, therefore, if a man cannot provide or protect, then he's not a man. So think about somebody with ALS who's in a wheelchair who physically cannot work. If that we're pushing that a man should do this and a man should do that, what we're saying is that he's not a man. And we're taking away from his self-worth. And two, we're making it seem like you get your value through being a man. Like, rather than saying, if we said a responsible person should be a provider and a protector, an adult should be a provider and protector, a parent should be a provider and a protector, that's great. But by assigning it to gender, now we're making it seem like your value comes through being a man rather than being the only you that will ever exist. That's where your value comes from. And that ultimately comes down to some patriarchal stuff once we're saying that your value comes from being a man, because that's just a hop, skip, and a jump away from, like, for a lot of us, we didn't have access to being a provider through, or at least we felt like we didn't have access to being a provider through traditional means. But all the rule says is that I have to be a provider and a protector. So how many of us sold drugs to feed our kids and then patted ourselves on the back?
Yeah, I'm doing what a man's supposed to do because I'm selling drugs on this yard and I'm sending it home to my kids. That's the problem with that.
Hey, and also think of, hey.
I looked at like 8 ex-drug dealers in the eye right now.
Hey, trip on
It was
this
all
too.
like-
Hey, how many guys right here are providers or protectors? And we're men, right? How many of us are providing or protecting? How many of us are being provided for by women? I think just something to think about.
What?
Big win.
Did I eat last night? You're stupid.
So that's if there's more questions.
That's right. We're an education
Facilitate our homework. Hug somebody. Let's pray out.
Tony.
You have a prepaid call from Richard, an inmate at the Correctional Training Facility, Soledad, California. This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded. To accept this call, say or dial 5 now.
What's up, love?
Hey, baby. How you doing?
You know, I was asked, like, what do you think of the work, the patriarchy work that we do in Success Stories? And I was talking about how you really inform our work and the experiences you have, and then like telling me about them, and then I kind of know what we got to do. Like, we wouldn't talk about street harassment in Success Stories if it wasn't for you. We wouldn't even know what that is.
Oh, no, they would know what it is.
We wouldn't know the words. I
This
mean,
call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
people actually push back against that language. They're like, it's not harassment, it's a compliment.
Yeah, a compliment without consent is harassment.
That's a good one. See, I'm about to say that in the next patriarchy workshop.
Just make sure you quote me.
Yeah.
Copyright, Edmond Vargas, Edmond,
Oh, jeez.
2017.
Hey, I love you. I gotta go. I just don't want them to call me over the thing.
I love you too. Yeah, I know.
All right. I love you.
All right. I love you too. I'm proud of you.
I'm proud of you too. Bye.
All right.
I have to get up pretty early. Luckily, I'm a morning person. I know a lot of people aren't. But I usually get up around like 5:30, so that I can get ready to go. It's about a 2-hour drive down to Soledad. When he first got arrested, I was living in New Jersey, so I had to fly across the country every time I wanted to see him. So at least I don't have to do that anymore. He got arrested about 3 months after we started dating. But yeah, we had to get married in the county jail. We got married in June 2012, about a year after we started dating. I'm excited that he's coming home soon. Overall, you have, men and women who have been marginalized in the first place and then caught up, causing some kind of harm or committing some kind of violence to get caught up in prison. And then you put them in a hyper-violent environment, and most of them don't have access to programs. And then they really struggle, and then a lot of them come out even worse than they were before, with even less opportunities and more trauma. Justice looks like fixing what was broken. Safety looks like having people come home from prison who are going to be better than they were before they went away. Patriarchy teaches men not to be vulnerable, not to ask for help, which was the situation with Richard. When he lost his job and decided to commit the robbery, I told him I would have lent him the money for his rent. He knew that. But I think that patriarchy instructed him not to reach out for help. And he didn't. He decided that he was gonna get it on his own, and that decision led him to be where he is. It would be really incredible to see, a man stepping up in such a serious way to battle patriarchy just like in general, but to see that happen in a prison, the most like hyper violent, toxic, masculine place, is just like nothing short of a miracle.
Every once in a while.
I know, I didn't bring a backup outfit today, but I was like, I can't foresee them tripping off of this, but I don't know. They have made me change these pants before, so.
Why? They were too tight?
What they literally told me
For
is.
your safety.
They literally told me they're form fitting. That was when I got like smart ass with them and was like, yeah, I have a form and they fit.
They made you change because they were form fitting, as opposed to.
Like, I don't really need an ally. I don't need somebody to like, you know, just say that they're on my team. Like, I need a comrade. I need an accomplice. I need somebody who is actually going to like show up and do the work. And that's what Richard's done. In a place where toxic masculinity is the worst, he has done like the really courageous thing to have these really difficult conversations with men and to continue to push back and push back and push back. I do like a lot of organizing on the outside, but then Richard does a lot of organizing on the inside. So I think a lot of times people think, oh yeah, I'm a male feminist, so I'm gonna hang out in all of these like feminist spaces with other women. It's like, no, we're not the ones who need you. Like, we know what the problems are. Like, go talk to your homies, go talk to your friends who are perpetuating this oppressive culture. And that's exactly what he did. And I can't ask for anything else. But I do continue to push back when I think he's being problematic.
If you ask any of these guys in this prison as to what it is that their greatest or worst memory is, most likely it'll revolve around a childhood. This is why I don't do that, and this is why I do that. Because it's who I am. Because it's how it is. Because it's what we do. And everyone around that's profiting in our minds is confirming it. But that's a lie as well.
It's understood that my father has the authority. By the time I was a teenager and he split the house, I was with my mom. So the effect of that, now she's trying to control me, trying to tell me what to do, but already in the back of my mind, I'm already got that implanted where, well, you ain't the authority, you know? My dad didn't say nothing about that. I'm gonna go out. And to the point where I just never came back home.
Like me, my father, he only had two emotions. Either he's quiet or he gets angry all the time. It's just one of the two. So I learned from him. So the only way I used to know how to express my emotions was through anger.
My first example of violence, I remember when I was 4 years old. I remember seeing my uncle beating up his girlfriend, and I was a little kid and I was scared. I was scared as hell, man. They appeared to have power and control in the household. There was some payoffs there.
It's hard. It's hard to deal with knowing things that you were taught were bullshit and putting them away and starting over, because it's like,
Is there fear to start over?
hell yeah.
Why?
It's because you don't, it's the fear, the unknown. What, you know, like, what if you don't have this that you're used to, what do you have? Nothing. You got emptiness, you got loneliness, you got not being accepted no more. You got like you conflicting within yourself. Like, who are you now?
It doesn't define you to be a man by you having to whoop somebody. It doesn't define you to be a man because you have 10 women. It doesn't define you being a man because you make the most money. You see what I'm saying?
We can sit here all day long and say we changed, we don't believe this, we don't believe this, because we're here. But when we get on them streets and circumstances are different, will we react the same then?
Reach out. Yeah, but I'm really happy, Rich, that you gave me this opportunity, man. Like,
I'm really happy that you're excited about doing it.
I am.
And that we got people who are down to really push this stuff, man. Because there was a time when I was worried that when I left, it wouldn't, that the feminism would get watered down in the group. And I don't worry about that anymore. Like, I feel, especially after our last training, I feel confident about it.
What does this mean? when it says like a man is defined by athletic ability. Like we can clearly see that there's plenty of sports that involve a great deal of athleticism, but not considered manly. And there's some that are, like if you look at a football player and you compare it to a male ballerina, like you would clearly see that the male ballerina wouldn't be considered manly, although that does involve a great deal of athleticism. But for a football player, you know, that the sport involves violence, you could tell that that would be more masculine according to this toxic masculine culture. So we're gonna replace this, for our purposes, athleticism with violence. I wanted to ask you for feedback on that. Remember when I gave the presentation in front of the board? One of the guys asked me, so what, you don't like girls now? And that's farthest from the truth, and I don't want to endorse that type of behavior.
I'm challenging toxic masculinity, and you're accusing me of being gay. That's the homophobic link to toxic masculinity.
That's the truth that actually happened.
Yeah, anything outside of this, we call gay.
Yeah.
If there is any possible way to take back the things that I've done to all the people I've harmed, including the people I've harmed in those robberies, especially them, then I would do it, but obviously there's not. So all one can do once you're here is try to stop stuff like that from happening in the future. Men who are not incarcerated are also living in a prison. Though they're not in a physical prison like this, I can't feel in front of everybody. I'm one way when I'm by myself, and I can only show emotion if I'm by myself, or do it in some kind of acceptable way by like having sex or by like playing music and getting high or whatever. Man, those are chains that we put on ourselves that we do not have to have.
I'm a man because I can physically dominate you. That's patriarchy. Like, if we can't see that those things are harmful, are we really seeing things clearly?
In many ways, it's handicapping us as a culture. It's keeping us from being honest about a lot of things, like, you know, what we're feeling.
We all have a story, basically. We all have pain. We all have a past. We all have stuff that we're carrying around. We all have dark secrets that we don't think anybody else is going to understand. And as soon as we start talking about it, somebody else that doesn't look like us or talk like us gets it, you know. And by opening up that unhealed wound, somebody else is getting free too with me.
You may have developed some false beliefs about yourself. You may have internalized your parents' lack of parenting skills as something that you were deficient of.
It just happens to be that instead of being a child with a problem that just happens to be able to afford a psychologist that could label it that way, we were just labeled a problem child, and we ran with it. The whole part of existing in this world has nothing to do with being a man. It has everything to do with being human.
All right, buddy. You gonna belly to belly?
I think we should all just rap bridges.
Hey, why we gotta make everything hard? Like, you can't just stand
It's him.
Can't just stand left, right? I like you, bro. Come on.
By no means.
Did I start out to be vain, but the evils penetrated, started coursing through my veins.
Hustler.
Win and blow money like a vein, and that pointed out the path to start the cycle up again. With a shame, cause I became with no sub. Pops dissed on me, single parent since birth. Mama worked hard, made less than she worth. When you're fatherless and poor, boy, that hunger really hurts.
But what's worse?
Dying the hunger strains of being young on the block with a pocket full of pain. People throwing judgment, say my methods is insane. And the fact I said a black, I'm out and turning in his grave. And no percent hurt people, always hurt people. A cold game to stop my pain, I gotta hurt people. Scratch the thought, real talk, I gotta work people. My jeans hand me down
and my shirt peephole.
Plus I'm soulless, oh yes, no concern when I turn where my soul is. And the notice on the door say we homeless. So what's morals when you just another poor kid? No Benny Hannas when your mama can't